The people who effortlessly achieve extraordinary results in their fields know something that the rest of us are missing. It's not what you think, and it's definitely not what they teach in business schools or productivity seminars. Stay with me, because this changes everything. Most people believe that high performance comes from working longer hours, having superior talent, or using more advanced tools and technologies. They think that top performers are simply more disciplined, more motivated, or blessed with natural abilities that make success inevitable. But this surface-level understanding completely misses the real secret that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Right now, you're probably grinding through your days, feeling busy but not particularly effective, switching between tasks constantly, responding to notifications and interruptions, and wondering why your results don't match your effort. You might have noticed that despite working harder than ever, your most important projects move forward at a frustratingly slow pace, your creative insights feel rare and forced, and your best work seems to happen only in those brief moments when everything else stops demanding your attention. What I'm about to reveal will completely transform your understanding of how exceptional work gets done, and why most people, despite their best intentions and considerable effort, remain trapped in patterns of shallow productivity that feel exhausting but produce mediocre results. You'll discover that the secret isn't about time management, task organization, or motivational techniques. It's about mastering a specific type of mental activity that most people have forgotten how to do. By the end of our time together, you'll understand what top performers mean when they talk about deep work. Sustained periods of focused, cognitively demanding activity that push your intellectual capacity to its limits and create value that's both rare and meaningful. You'll learn why this ability has become the most valuable skill in our economy, how to systematically develop it even in our distracted world, and how to structure your life so that deep work becomes not just possible, but inevitable and deeply satisfying. Have you noticed how much of your typical workday gets consumed by activities that feel productive in the moment, but contribute very little to your most important objectives or long-term success? There's something happening beneath the surface that most of us miss because we're focused on staying busy and responsive rather than examining the actual depth and value of our mental engagement. Picture this. Your morning begins with checking email and social media to see what happened overnight. You tell yourself this will only take a few minutes, but 30 minutes later, you're still scrolling through updates, responding to messages, and following links to articles that seem relevant but aren't directly related to your most important work. You finally pull yourself away and attempt to start on a significant project, but within minutes, you're interrupted by a colleague with a quick question that turns into a 20-minute discussion. The rest of your day follows a similar pattern. Meetings that could have been emails, emails that generate more emails, phone calls that accomplish little beyond maintaining social connections, and brief attempts at important work that get fragmented by constant interruptions from notifications, requests, and your own mental restlessness. By evening, you feel exhausted from all this activity, yet frustrated because you can't point to any substantial progress on work that truly matters. This experience reflects what researchers call the shallowing of work, a cultural shift toward mental activities that are logistical in nature, performed while distracted, and don't create much new value in the world. Shallow work includes activities like email management, social media monitoring, meeting attendance, routine administrative tasks, and quick responses to immediate requests. These activities feel important because they generate immediate feedback and social validation, but they rarely require deep thinking or produce lasting value. The problem is that our brains have become addicted to this type of shallow engagement because it provides constant stimulation and frequent rewards. Every email response gives you a small sense of accomplishment. Every notification creates a tiny burst of curiosity and engagement. Every meeting makes you feel important and connected. But these micro-rewards come at the cost of your capacity for sustained, deep engagement with complex challenges. Modern technology has amplified this problem exponentially. Smartphones ensure that shallow work opportunities are always available and immediately accessible. Social media platforms are designed to capture and fragment your attention with an endless stream of mildly interesting content. Digital communication tools create the expectation of immediate responsiveness that makes sustained focus feel almost antisocial or unprofessional. The result is what neuroscientists call continuous partial attention, a state where your mind is always somewhat engaged with multiple streams of information, but never fully concentrated on any single challenging task. This divided attention creates the illusion of productivity because you're always busy, always responding to something, always engaged with some form of work-related activity. But shallow work has a devastating impact on your capacity for the deep thinking that creates real value. When your mind becomes accustomed to constant stimulation and immediate gratification, it loses the ability to tolerate the slower pace and delayed rewards that complex work requires. You become mentally restless when faced with challenging problems that don't offer quick solutions or immediate feedback. Think of your mind like a muscle that's been trained only for quick, light repetitions. It maintains the capacity for rapid responses and surface-level engagement, but it loses the strength and endurance necessary for heavy lifting, the sustained, intense effort that breakthrough thinking and meaningful creation require. This shallowing effect is particularly insidious because it's largely invisible to the people experiencing it. Shallow work feels productive because it keeps you busy and generates tangible outputs, like completed emails, attended meetings, and cleared notifications. But these outputs rarely translate into the kind of value creation that advances careers, builds expertise, or produces work that others find genuinely valuable and irreplaceable. Perhaps most concerning is that shallow work creates a vicious cycle, where the more you engage in it, the more difficult deep work becomes, which makes you more dependent on shallow work for feelings of productivity and professional worth. People become trapped in patterns of constant reactivity and surface-level engagement, losing touch with their capacity for the sustained mental effort that their most important work requires. When you understand that most people have unknowingly trained themselves to work shallowly, you can begin to see why developing the ability to work deeply represents such an extraordinary competitive advantage. In a world where everyone is skimming the surface, the person who can dive deep has access to insights, solutions, and creative possibilities that remain invisible to those trapped in patterns of shallow engagement. Let me tell you about a master calligrapher in ancient China who was renowned throughout the empire for creating works of such extraordinary beauty and depth that scholars would travel for months just to observe his technique. Students expected to discover advanced brush methods or secret ink formulations, but what they found was far more profound and challenging than any technical instruction. When a young scholar arrived at the master's studio, he was surprised to find the teacher sitting motionless before a blank piece of rice paper, holding his brush poised but making no marks. Hours passed with no visible activity. The student grew restless and finally interrupted. "Master," he said, "I've been watching for hours, but you haven't created anything. Shouldn't you be practicing your technique or working on a piece? Other calligraphers I've observed work constantly, producing many pieces each day." The master continued his silent contemplation for several more minutes before responding. "Tell me, young scholar, what do you see when you observe those other calligraphers working constantly?" "I see dedicated artists producing beautiful work through diligent effort and continuous practice," the student replied. "And what do you see here?" the master asked, still motionless before his blank paper. The student hesitated. "I see nothing happening. No work being produced, no visible progress." The master smiled gently. "Look deeper. What kind of work is happening in the mind before the brush touches paper? Over the following weeks, the master taught the student about what he called deep creation, a way of working that prioritized profound engagement over visible activity. He explained that most calligraphers spent their time in what he termed surface work, mechanical repetition of familiar techniques, rapid production of competent but unremarkable pieces, and constant motion that created the appearance of productivity without genuine innovation or artistic depth. The calligrapher who creates 100 ordinary pieces, the master explained, contributes less to the art than the one who creates a single extraordinary piece. But extraordinary work requires a kind of mental engagement that most people have forgotten how to access. The master demonstrated that his periods of apparent inactivity were actually periods of intense mental work, deep contemplation of artistic possibilities, careful consideration of every potential brushstroke, and complete absorption in the creative challenge before him. When he finally did apply brush to paper, every movement was precise, intentional, and flowed from hours of concentrated preparation. True mastery, the teacher continued, requires the courage to work differently than everyone around you. While others stay busy with surface activities, the master goes deep. While others create many mediocre works, the master creates few exceptional works. While others seek the immediate satisfaction of visible progress, the master tolerates the discomfort of invisible preparation. The student learned that this approach required developing what the master called deep comfort, the ability to remain engaged with challenging problems for extended periods without becoming restless or seeking easier alternatives. Most people, the master explained, had trained themselves to work only at the surface level, where feedback was immediate and progress was visible, making them incapable of the sustained mental effort that true mastery required. The most profound lesson came when the master demonstrated the compound effects of deep work. A single piece created through hours of deep engagement would influence and inspire other artists for generations, while hundreds of pieces created through shallow work would be quickly forgotten. The deep work created lasting value that multiplied over time, while shallow work created temporary output that disappeared without impact. The path of depth, the master concluded, requires sacrifice. You must give up the immediate satisfactions of constant activity for the delayed gratifications of meaningful creation. You must exchange the social rewards of appearing busy for the personal satisfaction of working at your highest capacity. Most people are unwilling to make these sacrifices, which is why true mastery remains rare. Years later, when the student had become a respected artist himself, he understood that the most important teaching hadn't been about calligraphy techniques. It was about developing the mental discipline to engage deeply with important work while resisting the constant pull toward easier, more immediately rewarding activities. This ancient wisdom reveals a timeless truth about exceptional performance. It emerges not from constant activity or surface-level effort, but from sustained periods of deep engagement with challenging work that pushes the boundaries of skill and understanding. Here's what transforms everything about mastering deep work. Deep work isn't about working harder or longer. It's about working at a fundamentally different level of mental engagement that most people never access. Most people approach their important work the same way they approach routine tasks, with partial attention, frequent interruptions, and the expectation of immediate progress and feedback. They try to think deeply about complex problems while checking email, attempt creative work while remaining available for interruptions, and expect breakthrough insights to emerge during brief gaps between meetings and routine responsibilities. Let me tell you about Marcus, a brilliant software architect who was frustrated by his inability to solve complex technical challenges despite being highly intelligent and deeply knowledgeable in his field. He would spend entire days working on important projects, but his progress was painfully slow and his solutions felt incremental rather than innovative. Marcus's problem wasn't lack of expertise or effort, it was that he had never learned to work deeply. His typical approach to complex problems involved thinking about them for 15 to 20 minutes at a time between other activities, hoping that inspiration would strike during these brief, focused sessions. When insights didn't come quickly, he would move on to easier tasks, planning to return to the difficult work later when he felt more ready or had more time. Marcus's transformation began when he deliberately experimented with extended periods of uninterrupted focus on his most challenging problems. Instead of trying to solve them in fragments between other activities, he scheduled 4-hour blocks where he would engage with nothing but the specific technical challenge at hand. The difference was immediately apparent. During the first hour of deep work, Marcus would clear his mind of surface-level concerns and immerse himself completely in the problem. During the second hour, he would begin to see patterns and connections that were invisible during fragmented work sessions. By the third hour, he often experienced what he could only describe as mental breakthroughs, sudden insights that seemed to emerge from nowhere but actually resulted from sustained intellectual engagement.
Most remarkably, the solutions Marcus developed during deep work sessions were qualitatively different from anything he had created through shallow work. They were more elegant, more innovative, and more comprehensive because they emerged from a level of thinking that was only accessible through sustained, undistracted focus. This experience revealed a revolutionary insight about deep work. It's not just a more intense version of regular work. It's an entirely different cognitive state that produces fundamentally different and superior results. When you engage deeply with challenging problems, your mind accesses levels of creativity, insight, and synthesis that remain completely unavailable during shallow work. The insight challenges our cultural assumption that all mental work is essentially the same, varying only in difficulty or duration. But research in cognitive science reveals that deep, sustained focus creates measurable changes in brain function that enable breakthrough thinking. During deep work, different neural networks become active. Attention systems operate more efficiently, and the mind enters states similar to those experienced by elite athletes during peak performance. Deep work is fundamentally different from shallow work in several crucial ways. First, it requires what psychologists call cognitive isolation, the complete absence of distracting stimuli that allow the mind to engage fully with complex material. Second, it involves what researchers term deliberate practice, sustained engagement with tasks at the edge of your current ability level. Third, it produces what economists call human capital, skills and knowledge that are valuable, rare, and difficult to replicate. The revolutionary aspect of this insight is that it explains why most people feel constantly busy but rarely produce truly exceptional work. They're working hard, but not working deeply, creating the illusion of productivity while remaining on the surface of their intellectual potential. They mistake activity for achievement and busyness for effectiveness. When you understand that deep work is a distinct cognitive capability that must be deliberately developed and systematically protected, everything changes about how you approach your most important work. You stop trying to squeeze complex thinking into brief gaps between other activities and start creating the conditions where deep thinking can flourish. The insight also reveals why deep work has become increasingly rare and therefore increasingly valuable in our economy. As more people become trapped in patterns of shallow work, those who can work deeply gain exponential advantages in their ability to learn complex skills, solve difficult problems, and create valuable work that can't be easily replicated or automated. Most importantly, deep work isn't just about professional achievement. It's about accessing your full intellectual potential and experiencing the profound satisfaction that comes from engaging completely with meaningful challenges. When you work deeply, you don't just produce better results. You become more capable, more creative, and more fulfilled by the quality of your mental engagement with the world. Foundation 1. Concentration. The first foundation of mastering deep work is developing the ability to sustain complete,
undivided attention on cognitively demanding tasks for extended periods without succumbing to distraction or mental fatigue. This concentrated attention is what distinguishes deep work from the fragmented focus that characterizes most modern work.
Concentration for deep work is different from the focused attention required for routine tasks. It involves what researchers call executive attention, the ability to maintain cognitive control while working on complex problems that don't have obvious solutions or immediate feedback. This type of attention must be systematically developed like physical fitness through progressive training and consistent practice. The practice begins with learning to work for increasingly longer periods without any external distractions. No notifications, no interruptions, no access to email or social media. Most people discover that their initial capacity for sustained concentration is much lower than they expected, often lasting only 15 to 20 minutes before mental restlessness sets in. This isn't a personal failing, but simply reflects how modern life has trained our brains to expect constant stimulation. Building concentration also requires developing comfort with the discomfort that accompanies challenging mental work. Deep work often involves wrestling with problems that don't yield to quick solutions, thinking through complex scenarios that resist easy analysis, and maintaining engagement even when progress feels slow or uncertain. This tolerance for intellectual discomfort is essential for accessing the insights that only emerge through sustained effort. The foundation of concentration also includes learning to recognize and work with your natural attention rhythms. Most people have specific times of day when their capacity for sustained focus is naturally higher, and optimal conditions that support concentrated work. Understanding and leveraging these patterns allows you to allocate your most challenging work to periods when concentration comes most easily. As this foundation develops, you'll find that sustained concentration becomes less effortful and more natural. What initially requires significant willpower gradually becomes an automatic response to engaging with important work. You'll also discover that concentrated work is intrinsically satisfying in ways that shallow work never is, creating its own motivation for continued practice. Foundation 2. Depth. The second foundation involves learning to engage with work at a level of cognitive intensity that pushes your intellectual capacity to its limits, rather than operating in the comfortable zone of routine mental activity that characterizes most daily work. Depth means working on tasks that require your full cognitive capacity and couldn't be performed well while multitasking or during brief periods between other activities. These are typically tasks that involve complex reasoning, creative synthesis, learning new skills, or solving problems that don't have predetermined solutions. Deep work pushes you to the edge of your current abilities rather than staying within familiar competencies. The practice of depth requires deliberately choosing work that challenges your intellectual capacity rather than defaulting to easier tasks that provide quicker satisfaction. This often means tackling projects that feel slightly beyond your current skill level, engaging with problems that don't have obvious solutions, or pursuing learning that requires sustained mental effort rather than passive consumption.
This foundation includes developing the ability to distinguish between work that appears important but operates at a shallow level and work that genuinely requires deep engagement. Many tasks that seem significant actually involve routine cognitive operations that don't push intellectual boundaries or create substantial new value. As depth becomes natural, you'll discover that working at your cognitive limits is energizing rather than draining when approached skillfully. The mental challenge of deep work creates what researchers call eustress, positive stress that enhances performance and satisfaction rather than depleting energy and motivation. Foundation 3. Rhythm. The third foundation is creating sustainable patterns and structures that make deep work a regular part of your routine rather than something that happens only when conditions are perfect or when external pressures demand it. Rhythm means establishing consistent practices that support deep work rather than leaving it to chance or motivation. This involves creating what researchers call environmental cues that signal to your mind that it's time for sustained, focused engagement. These might include specific physical locations designated for deep work, consistent times of day allocated to challenging projects, or rituals that help transition from shallow to deep mental states. The practice of rhythm also includes developing what we might call depth sessions, regularly scheduled periods specifically designed for cognitively demanding work. These sessions should be protected from interruptions, scheduled during your peak mental energy periods, and structured to support sustained engagement rather than task completion or communication. Creating rhythm requires making deep work a priority in your schedule rather than something that happens only when other responsibilities are handled. This often means saying no to shallow work requests during designated deep work periods, establishing boundaries around your availability for meetings and routine communication, and designing your daily structure to support rather than undermine cognitive intensity. This foundation also involves developing sustainable approaches to deep work that can be maintained over time without leading to burnout or exhaustion. This includes understanding the relationship between deep work and recovery, learning to alternate periods of intense focus with genuine rest, and building practices that restore rather than deplete your capacity for sustained mental effort. As rhythm becomes established, deep work transforms from something that requires special effort to something that feels natural and expected. Your mind begins to anticipate and prepare for periods of sustained focus, making it easier to access deeper levels of engagement when these periods arrive. Foundation 4. Value. The fourth foundation involves connecting your deep work practice to outcomes that create genuine value. Work that matters not just to you personally, but contributes meaningfully to your field, organization, or the broader world. Value means focusing your deep work on activities that leverage your unique skills and knowledge to create results that wouldn't exist without your specific contribution. This goes beyond just working hard on important tasks to working deeply on tasks where depth makes a substantial difference in the quality and significance of the outcomes. The practice of value creation requires developing clear criteria for evaluating which projects and problems deserve your deep work attention. Not all challenging work is worth the investment of sustained cognitive effort. Some problems are difficult but not important, some projects are complex but not valuable, and some activities require focus but don't benefit from depth. This foundation also involves understanding what economists call your human capital, the unique combination of skills, knowledge, and experience that you can bring to bear on important problems. Deep work is most valuable when it builds on and extends this human capital, rather than just applying routine mental effort to arbitrary tasks. Creating value through deep work often requires what researchers call deliberate practice, systematically working on skills and challenges that are slightly beyond your current capacity. This approach ensures that your deep work sessions not only produce valuable outcomes, but also develop your capabilities for creating even more value in the future. As this foundation develops, you'll find that the value created through deep work creates its own momentum. Exceptional work leads to better opportunities, which provide access to more meaningful challenges, which justify even greater investment in deep work capabilities. This creates an upward spiral where depth generates value, which enables more depth, leading to exponentially increasing impact over time. Now that you understand the four foundations, let's explore specific strategies for implementing deep work practices in your daily life and career. The goal is to create systems that consistently enable high-quality cognitive engagement despite the demands and distractions of modern life. Designing deep work. Environment creation. Establish specific physical spaces dedicated exclusively to deep work. These environments should be free from distractions, optimized for sustained focus, and equipped with everything you need for extended periods of cognitive engagement. The goal is to create environmental cues that automatically trigger deep work mindsets. Time architecture. Structure your schedule to include regular, protected periods for deep work rather than hoping to find time between other commitments.
This might mean early morning blocks before others are awake, late afternoon sessions after routine responsibilities are handled, or full days dedicated to important projects. Ritual development. Create consistent routines that help transition from shallow to deep work states. These might include specific warm-up activities, environmental adjustments, goal-setting practices, or physical preparations that signal to your mind that sustained focus is beginning. Distraction elimination. Systematically remove or block access to sources of interruption during deep work sessions. This includes digital distractions like social media and email, physical distractions like phones and unnecessary materials, and social distractions like being available for non-urgent requests. Skill building. Progressive training. Gradually increase your capacity for sustained concentration by working for longer periods over time. Start with whatever duration feels challenging but achievable, then slowly extend these periods as your concentration stamina improves. Difficulty calibration. Choose deep work tasks that are appropriately challenging, difficult enough to require sustained mental effort, but not so difficult that they create frustration or overwhelm. The goal is to work consistently at the edge of your current capabilities. Feedback integration. Develop ways to assess the quality and depth of your deep work sessions so you can refine your approach over time. This might include tracking how long you can maintain focus, evaluating the quality of insights generated, or measuring progress on important projects.
Recovery optimization. Learn to restore your capacity for deep work through activities that genuinely renew mental energy rather than just providing distraction. This often includes physical exercise, time in nature, meaningful social connection, or engaging with different types of intellectual challenges. Value maximization. Priority identification. Regularly assess which projects and problems would benefit most from deep work investment. Focus your sustained attention on work where depth creates disproportionate value rather than applying it uniformly to all challenging tasks. Skill leverage. Align your deep work practice with developing and applying your most valuable professional capabilities. Use sustained focus to build expertise in areas that matter most to your career and contribution rather than just working deeply on arbitrary challenges. Impact measurement. Track how your deep work sessions contribute to meaningful outcomes rather than just measuring hours spent in focused states. The goal is to create genuine value, not just to practice concentration for its own sake. Compound benefits. Structure your deep work to build on itself over time, with each session contributing to larger projects or developing capabilities that enable even more valuable future work. Avoid one-off deep work sessions that don't connect to broader objectives. Integration strategies. Shallow work management. Develop efficient systems for handling necessary but shallow work so it doesn't interfere with or drain energy from deep work periods. This might include batching routine tasks, delegating when possible, or establishing specific times for administrative work. Communication boundaries. Set clear expectations with colleagues and clients about when you're available for immediate response versus when you're engaged in focused work. Train others to respect your deep work periods by consistently protecting them. Energy management. Learn to align your most challenging deep work with your natural energy rhythms rather than trying to maintain consistent cognitive intensity throughout the day. Schedule demanding work during peak mental energy periods and lighter work during natural low points. Continuous improvement. Regularly evaluate and refine your deep work practices based on results and changing circumstances. What enables deep work effectively may evolve as your skills develop, your responsibilities change, or your understanding deepens. Advanced practices. Flow state cultivation. Develop the ability to enter flow states during deep work sessions, periods where challenge and skill are perfectly matched, creating effortless engagement with difficult work. This involves finding the optimal balance between task difficulty and current capabilities. Creative synthesis. Use deep work sessions not just for focused execution, but for creative thinking that combines ideas from different domains or generates novel approaches to persistent problems. This often requires longer sessions that allow time for both focused analysis and creative insight.
Strategic thinking. Allocate some deep work time to strategic reflection about priorities, direction, and opportunities rather than just tactical execution of predetermined plans. This meta-level thinking often produces insights that transform how you approach all other work. Knowledge integration. Use deep work sessions to synthesize learning from multiple sources, connect insights across different areas of expertise, or develop comprehensive understanding of complex topics rather than just consuming information passively. As you consistently practice deep work and develop these capabilities, you'll experience profound changes that extend far beyond improved productivity or professional success. You'll discover what it means to engage with your intellectual potential fully and authentically. Cognitive enhancement. One of the most significant benefits of regular deep work practice is the enhancement of your cognitive capabilities across all areas of thinking. Sustained practice with challenging mental tasks strengthens your ability to concentrate, improves your capacity for complex reasoning, and enhances your creative problem-solving abilities. This cognitive enhancement occurs because deep work literally reshapes your brain through neuroplasticity. Regular engagement with demanding mental tasks strengthens neural pathways associated with focus and complex thinking, while weakening pathways associated with distraction and shallow processing. Professional distinction. Deep work capability creates extraordinary professional advantages because it's becoming increasingly rare in our distracted world. While most people struggle with fragmented attention and shallow output, those who can work deeply produce results that are both higher quality and more innovative. This professional distinction often leads to what economists call winner-take-all dynamics, where the small percentage of people who can work deeply capture disproportionate rewards in terms of opportunities, recognition, and compensation. Personal satisfaction. Perhaps most importantly, deep work creates profound personal satisfaction that comes from engaging fully with meaningful challenges. When you work at your cognitive limits on problems that matter, you experience what researchers call eudaimonia, the satisfaction that comes from expressing your highest capabilities. This satisfaction is qualitatively different from the temporary pleasure that comes from entertainment or the relief that comes from completing routine tasks. It's the deep fulfillment that emerges from knowing you're using your mind to its fullest potential. Creative expression. Deep work enables levels of creative expression that are impossible through shallow engagement. When you can sustained focus on creative challenges for extended periods, you access insights and produce work that surprises even you with its originality and depth. This creative capacity develops because creativity often requires what researchers call incubation, sustained engagement with problems that allows unconscious processing to contribute to conscious solution development.
Learning acceleration. Regular deep work practice dramatically accelerates your ability to master new skills and knowledge domains. When you can focus completely on learning challenges, you develop expertise much more rapidly than through fragmented study or passive consumption of information. This learning acceleration is particularly valuable in rapidly changing fields, where the ability to quickly master new concepts and skills provides significant competitive advantages. Legacy building. Ultimately, deep work enables you to create work that has lasting impact beyond immediate circumstances. The insights, solutions, and creative works that emerge from sustained cognitive engagement often influence others long after the initial effort is complete. This legacy-building capacity comes from the depth and quality of deep work rather than just the quantity of effort invested. Concentrated excellence in specific areas creates more enduring value than scattered competence across many areas. Remember that mastering deep work isn't about becoming a hermit or avoiding all shallow activities. It's about developing the capacity to engage deeply when deep engagement is valuable, while maintaining the flexibility to handle necessary shallow work efficiently.
The goal is to become someone who can access their full cognitive potential when it matters most, creating value that wouldn't exist without your specific contribution. In a world where most people are trapped in patterns of shallow work, this capacity becomes not just a professional advantage, but a pathway to authentic fulfillment and meaningful contribution. As you continue developing these capabilities, you'll discover that deep work isn't just about getting better results. It's about becoming more fully yourself through the quality of attention you bring to the challenges that matter most to you. Your capacity for sustained, focused engagement becomes both a tool for achievement and a pathway to discovering what you're truly capable of creating when your mind is given the space and time to operate at its highest level.